current and no one else saw it. And she was pretty close to going under. She was definitely bobbing under, and I took my friend's board and I ran out and got to her just in the nick of time, and then the lifeguards came and got her after that. The power of the ocean deserves everyone's respect. Even on tranquil days, hard to see powerful rip currents are present up and down our coast. Every year, unsuspecting swimmers find themselves in the grip of a rip. Many lose their lives. Such tragic events could easily be prevented with a few local tips. Know before you go and always check beach forecast before you head out. Always swim near a lifeguard. And if you find yourself caught in a rip current, don't panic. Float, wave, and shout until help can arrive. And if you're a good swimmer, don't fight the rip current. Swim parallel to the beach to break free of the current's hold. Live like a local, love the beach, respect the ocean.
America's kids are returning to class, in school and at home. And this year, learning is especially tough on students who already struggle with poverty, emotional trauma, and other barriers.
That's where our organization, Communities in Schools, can help. For years, we've had caring adults inside schools, helping these students stay in school.
And now, we are taking our work beyond the school walls, tutoring, mentoring, and counseling students, providing resources for at-home learning,
Delivering meals, providing household supplies, connecting kids with online classrooms, and using technology to maintain the one-on-one relationships we know can transform the lives of students and their families.
We are doing whatever it takes to make sure all kids have the opportunity to learn and succeed.
Communities in Schools, going wherever we are needed to help those students who are most in need thrive.
To see how you can help kids succeed, visit communitiesinschools.org. That's communitiesinschools.org.
Once upon a time, our family had trouble with pests around our home. Did you know that stinging insects send tons of people to the hospital? And teeny ticks and mosquitoes can be all around the yard. Their bites can make people and their pets sick. Mice, rats, and roaches need food and water just like us. You do not want them to visit. They can spread disease and make it hard to breathe. I'm sure glad this story has a happy ending.
Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org. A public service message from the National Pest Management Association.
WGSX Lynn Haven, WTOT, W271D in Mariana, WVLQ Port St. John, powered by Pepsi, ESPN Northwest Florida. Welcome to the house. It's time for the Afternoon Underdogs.
It's happening. Wow. It's on right now.
Opinionated and unfiltered. The hot takes, the rants, and the sports talk you crave.
Give it to me.
ESPN Northwest Florida.
What is going on, Northwest Florida? You guys are riding with the Afternoon Underdogs. I'm David Hayes, along with Drew Gorman, Kyle Wright, and Miles Nasty Lashley. We are the Afternoon Underdogs, and you're listening to ESPN Northwest Florida 104.3 in Panama City, 102.1 in Mariana, and 101.9 in Port St. Joe. Thank you guys for riding along with us this afternoon. Beautiful Wednesday, February 15th here in the year of 2023. Drew and Kyle, we haven't got your thoughts yet on the Super Bowl, so if y'all want to dive into a recap, we'll get right into that. Coming up in the next segment, we'll have Alan Watson, owner of Golf Plus, talking some golf with him. Tiger Woods makes his return in a non-major event, which makes that event the Genesis Invitational now major, at least newsworthy major. We'll also have Kyle Rickey with Motor Racing Network on with us today at 5:20, getting you guys all prepped up for the Daytona 500. We had Richard Boban, our winner here. He's going to be headed to the Daytona 500 in the grandstands. Incredible seats there for him. Me and Kyle will be going down for media. That's going to be my first time going to a NASCAR event racing-wise. And so I'm pretty stoked about that as well. Going to be able to hopefully get a couple of interviews down or while we're down there. So it should be a good time. Hopefully we can run into Richard Boban as well. All right, Kyle and Drew, who wants to go first with your recap of the Super Bowl and start the conversation?
To me, I just want to give a big shout out to who should have been the MVP, Jerick McKinnon. You shared a post earlier this week about how he slid in front, staying inbounds, just letting that clock run. Should have had some consideration, and it would have brought your outside the box, I'm pointing at Kyle, would have brought Kyle's outside the box MVP right into play, because that was a just 1,000 IQ play by sliding and staying in bounds and letting that clock just bleed.
Should the Eagles have tried to like pick him up and carry him in the end zone? They didn't. Like they gave up on that play.
Well,
they were trying to let him score, so they had enough time to
but the
play.
Eagles got to have more awareness that we're going to try to let him score. He's going to go down. We got to drag his butt to the end zone.
I like that take. My biggest thing is I don't know how I feel about positional players being able to give themselves up. You know what I mean? In a sense, like you should have at least had to been touched, because if it didn't work out like that, let's just say that you have to be touched or you have to be, tackled down. You can't just slide down and give yourself up, even though I understand player safety, and that's going to continue to be the rule. But they didn't touch him while he was down in bounds, and what was his next move? It wasn't in the end zone. It was out of bounds, and so that would have saved. Right. It could have caused a little bit more drama there. I appreciate your valiant effort of trying to make Jerick McKinnon the MVP or giving him the thoughts there, but what do you have, 40 total yards or so? Very high in football IQ. And in 20 years, I'm sure he'll be telling his kids and grandkids that he scored in the Super Bowl, except for these days the box scores run back and, they'll eventually look that up. But, yes, super high football IQ play there. And would he be a Kansas City Chief? I don't know what the contract looks like, but would he be a Kansas City Chief in the event that he didn't do that and somehow the Eagles come away and win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Like if he scored the touchdown, but valiant effort again, but I just can't say that Jerick McKinnon should have been the MVP. If there was anyone else who would be the MVP outside of Mahomes, it would have been Nick Bolton.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, he almost had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That Miles Sanders play was close. It was very close. Man, I thought it was a fantastic game. I mean, it was as advertised. I wish it would have been a little more back and forth rather than the big lead, the big swings in the lead, like Philly goes up by 10 and then Kansas City like just completely suffocates them in the second half. The most surprising part of the game was that both defensive lines just got absolutely clamped. It was unbelievable to see. Like, 1 sack and it was for a loss of a yard, if I'm not mistaken? 1 or 2 yards?
There was 2 sacks and it was 2 yards. Okay. And both of them were against Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles.
So that's wild, right? Because those were probably on scramble plays, and he almost got back to the offensive line anyway. So,
the line of scrimmage,
Or the line of scrimmage, right. So
same thing.
Very, very shocking to have those 2 really good pass rushes not play a major factor, and also no running game at all. I mean, outside of it, if they weren't wearing Jalen Hurts on the back of their jersey, then they weren't running the ball.
Hurts or Mahomes.
Right.
Mahomes had 2 – I don't know how he played with that ankle. There was that play right before half where he got rolled up on, and in the past few days they've come out with like the mic'd up, and you can listen to him talk about, oh, this hurts, ow, ow, sitting on the sideline. As soon as Andy Reid looks at him, he's like, I'm good.
There's just nobody even close to the level of play that Patrick Mahomes is able to be on right now. I think I've been making the post on Facebook, and I do it to be funny and troll, but I really do think, like, the top quarterbacks in the league, Patrick Mahomes and one-legged Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. It's unbelievable what he's able to do, what he's able to accomplish. And not a big flashy game statistically, really, in the yardage column, which is crazy, right? To see 38 points put up, and what do you have, like 185 passing yards?
182, yeah.
So crazy.
60 or 46 rushing yards, I believe.
So 200 yards of offense.
44.
Got him 38 points.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. And
they
didn't run the ball a whole lot.
But one of those was a defensive touchdown.
And this is what I was going to say, right? It sucks that the difference in that game, the holding call, it was a good call. It was the right call. We're all there. Unfortunately, it was in a huge moment, which you always hate to see, but it was the right call. It was you have to make that call in that moment. You absolutely have to. You can't let that go. But you take away that and that Jalen Hurts fumble, which, by the way, worst fumble of all time. I just want to, like, that's
running with the ball,
right,
and all of a sudden just
doesn't get touched. He switches arms, and
we've had a couple of those, like the Tua fumble. I think Tannehill's done it as well. Like,
I mean, like in Super Bowl history.
Right?
Yeah,
very
outside
true.
of the one where Cam Newton didn't jump on the ball.
At least
Jameis Winston versus Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, that was to this day. I feel like that one was on purpose because he threw that ball backwards. But everyone's arguing about the saying Jalen got face masked after when he was going to recover it. Man, it's just like, stop making excuses. Stop. You lost, bro. I mean, he doesn't. That's a terrible fumble. It's the worst fumble anybody could ever make. He didn't get. It's a non-contact fumble, right? He's going to switch arms. Yeah. Drops the ball. Bolton scoops it up. Nobody's making a play. He's gone. That ultimately was the only turnover of the game and the biggest momentum swing.
It was a great game all around. It just sucks that it ended that way and came down to I want to say that call, but they still had a chance to stop them after.
I disagree that you have to make that call right there, but I do agree that or I'll say this, you can't be mad at the call. Though, you know what I mean? Like, right. You can't be mad at it, but at the end of the day, I don't think that you have to make that call, because I'm sure that there's plenty of, if we were to go back and watch every single play, we would see some situations where it's like, well, a flag definitely needed to be thrown right there.
Of course. But I mean, on the third down of a Super Bowl where it definitely affected the play, that flag's got to be thrown.
We can agree to disagree on that. Okay. I'm 100% fine with agreeing to disagree on that. Miles, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to get y'all's thoughts on the Eagles not stopping the Chiefs one time in the second half. The Chiefs drove down the field every single time they had the ball in the second half and scored.
It's the turf's fault. The turf monster, dude.
That $800,000 turf?
Yeah.
What's crazy is, like, here you go again, right? This is where coaching and experience comes into play, because the Eagles were clearly not ready for it. Where the Chiefs were having issues with it too. They didn't really have to switch their cleats, but they were slipping all over the place. The A.J. Brown touchdown, the only reason that becomes a thing is because the safety for the Chiefs slips down. But it's like, Kansas City played there in week 1, had a big injury to Harrison Butker, and they kind of knew that, hey, these are the conditions of this field. We need to be a little more prepared this time, and that's what separates Andy Reid from a lot of the league. I would say, outside of Bill Belichick, what's he done since Brady's left? Like, Andy Reid's probably the best coach in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot's got to be said about Andy Reid. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brian Daboll. Obviously, Nick Sirianni's got to get some love in that situation as well, or in that conversation as well. We'll see what happens here for that'll be year 3 with the Philadelphia Eagles. But if they can get back, I mean, to do what they did in the playoffs last year, right, which was one and done, got pretty much embarrassed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then to turn around, you make your Super Bowl run, and if they have any, especially, it still is getting lost on people, but how good the NFC East was.
No, absolutely. Another part of that holding call that they said was everybody's complaining that the pass was uncatchable. I just want to explain the rules of penalties to everybody that doesn't know that an uncatchable ball does not matter on a hold. So hold, where the ball goes does not matter, because the ball is still in the quarterback's hand when that flag comes out. Uncatchable only matters on pass interference. Holding is a pre-throw penalty.
I brought that up with Derek Tate yesterday because I was like, man, shouldn't they have that ability to be able to pick up a flag on a ball that was uncatchable on holding? Especially if the holding really didn't dictate what was going to happen with that play. And he brought up a great point that then you're giving even more discretionary calls to the referees and more room for them to bend certain things or have it play out the way that their perspective saw it play out. Again, such a tough job to be an NFL referee. There's an official of any sort. Such a tough job. You're going to get beat up either which way. You know what I mean? You don't ever hear anyone say, man, they called a great game. They called a great game. No. This is the first time in a long time that you're hearing people say good things about the commentators. And now Greg Olson's facing a $7 million pay cut.
Look, I'll take crap from anybody for a part-time job that pays $150,000 a year. I'll go out there and call an NFL game. And my take on it was, I said yesterday, it is the right penalty. You can call it, but they hadn't called holding or defensive holding all game. I don't think you can call one there. You let them play like you have been all game.
I mean, if you let them play, then they're just going to do whatever the hell they want, right? I mean, that's
Isn't that what we all
they did the
want?
whole game
Yeah.
though until that play. That was the only defensive holding of the game.
It was the biggest one of the game.
There was only, 9 total penalties, I think, called in this entire game. 6 on the Eagles and 3 on the 2 or 3 on the Chiefs. And I believe only 2 of them ended up becoming first down, like them gaining a first down off of that.
Do you think going into the game, hearing all of the questions that Roger Goodell was asking, was being asked, and everyone in the media basically all the public bashing refs in the previous games, do you think that this played a big difference in them only throwing the flag 9 times, trying to not necessarily being gun shy, but basically like, okay, let's make sure it's a holding before we throw it. Let's make sure it's pass interference before we throw it.
I think that these guys, in all reality, my true opinion on this is I think these guys do go out with every intention to call the best game that they possibly can.
Yeah.
Because just because there's more penalties doesn't mean, just because they throw more flags doesn't mean that they're creating this stuff or conjuring these things up. That just means that the teams could have been less disciplined that day.
There's the disparity of who's the most penalized team in the NFL as opposed to probably there's a reason these 2 teams were the number 1 seed. You don't commit undisciplined penalties and still end up with the number 1 seed. So these were probably 2 of your better without doing the research, I'm willing to say they're in the top 5, top 7 of the least penalized teams in the NFL from last year. So I'm willing to put my paycheck on it.
Oh, well, here we go.
They're in
Google's
the
not
top.
too far away, and I'm not going to bet, but I'll take your paycheck. I wanted to kind of, if they used what Roger Goodell was talking about, if they used that to say, hey, we're like, let's make sure it's a penalty, then they're doing a disjustice to officiating in general. Because if that had to take place for them to, or for the league and the officials to come together and say, hey, let's not throw too many here. Like, no, at the end of the day, right, I think what fans really want more than anything is consistency. Yeah. And it is blatant sometimes when it becomes inconsistent. Like Miles said, they went